A hectic schedule for Newcastle starts right now, between now and, of course, the start of next year. And they kick off against a team that will be battling against them come the end of the season, according to some, quite possibly Zach Djellab, who is a Chelsea fan. Newcastle-Chelsea. It's always been a tough one for Chelsea over the years. It was quite a difficult game. And I think if you remember a year ago, we were on our way to Qatar. And the last game that Newcastle and Chelsea played before the international break was a great victory for Newcastle, which kind of set a tone. We're sort of off the back of an international break now. And you've got a team like Newcastle that are they sort of wobbling in a sense in terms of the sort of mentality there? Because the games are coming thick and fast. Mm-hmm. The injuries are coming thick and fast. And Chelsea, who have been on the other end of that, there's a few elements of hope there, surely, after that 4-4.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's not too long ago since Newcastle beat Arsenal as well, which was a huge game for them. I think the big thing for them is the injuries, right? And obviously the other stuff that's going off.
Well, let's run through them just quickly, Zach. Yeah. So Newcastle injuries currently: Tonali, which is more of a suspension, isn't it? Jacob Murphy out until January. Dan Burn, January. Callum Wilson, late December. Elliot Anderson, Sven Botman, Harvey Barnes. Lewis Hall is unable to play because it's Chelsea and he's still on loan. Almiron could be fit for the game. Fabian Schär might be fit as well. Manquillo and Matt Targett as well. And in particular on the left-hand side, which we'll get onto when it comes to the game itself. The left side is a real problem for Newcastle. Can they cope with all of this?
I mean, Eddie Howe, I think what we've seen, especially when the Champions League first started, was that kind of reaction for Newcastle to see like, okay, now we've got to manage our squad well here in the Premier League games and cup domestic competitions, and now also playing in Europe. I mean, when you look at that front three, it's still not that bad for Newcastle. Isaac, Joe Linton and Gordon are a really strong front three, and I think Gordon's arguably been one of Newcastle's best players this season. You then add to the midfield, and Willock, who I think has come back from injury, was someone that was so strong for them last year and has done so well for them kind of in this position under Eddie Howe. It's also away for Chelsea too, which is a big thing. Going to Newcastle right now with the atmosphere that they've created over the last year or so is a really difficult thing. I think you've seen clubs in the Champions League also kind of struggle with that as well. And whilst, there is a lot of positivity going around Chelsea, it wasn't so long ago when we were kind of criticising them for results that were that poor. I mean, you look at the Tottenham result. Chelsea won 4-1. However, it came out of it. It felt like they'd gone back a step after beating the.
Well, they only
actually
drew the game against Man City.
Exactly. So I think it's worth maybe kind of realising how this could go. Like, I think right now, if you went to Pochettino, I know he'd always say about a win, would you take a draw at Newcastle? I think you'd happily take that. I think Chelsea going into this run of Spurs, Man City and Newcastle, right all three back to back, people were saying they wouldn't get a single point. And so to go out and not lose a game would be incredible, whilst also building this style of football. But yeah, no, from a Newcastle point of view, I think it's the defence where I think things could be a bit of a struggle. Obviously, having lost a few players, and that's if someone will also back from injury. Obviously, Matt Ritchie at left back could be quite a target for a Cole Palmer if he's playing on that right wing.
I was thinking about the left back position. I think there are a couple of options there. Ritchie definitely could be one of those.
Trippier could do it.
Trippier could go over to that left-hand side. Yeah. Livramento as well could play on that left-hand side, which kind of helps. And again, showcases the squad building, both the squad building and the development that Eddie Howe has been able to provide Newcastle. Because I was listening to a podcast the other day and they were talking about the Liverpool squad and they said, we've got 15 starters. And I was thinking, that's interesting. Okay. And that's probably something that teams need. They need 15 guys that there's no drop-off in quality if you make those changes. With Newcastle, I think that's always been my concern with them. And then you add these injuries in here as well. That's going to make life difficult. So you need someone to step up. Is that person Anthony Gordon? Is it time for him to step up and take this team?
In all fairness, like Zach said there, I think he's actually been one of Newcastle's best players this season. He's got such a connection to the Newcastle fans because he's an absolute workhorse. He's up and down, and
that's one of them. Then he at the touch.
Within 5 minutes of the game, he's right on it. But I think the one big thing for this Newcastle side is just on the point Zach was making there. They've got a massive game against PSG. And they will now have to weigh up what they want more, because they go to PSG and lose, then that final game is really tricky. And you probably argue this Chelsea is a little bit more winnable, but also the feeling's gone a little bit. I think last season...
Would you dare rest players for this one?
That would be the ultimate disrespect to Chelsea. But I just wonder... You probably won't win in Paris, I don't think. So you probably will win this. So maybe you do it the other way around, potentially rest in Paris and then hope you win the last game. But this is the Champions League, difficulty that they're going to have. And also the feeling at home last year when they took on Chelsea was like, big bad Chelsea are here, we've got to beat them. Now Newcastle are like, we're the big bad team. So it's actually only Arsenal, City and Liverpool that we need to beat, and everyone else we should beat at home.
The stats for Anthony Gordon are interesting here because, the amount of chat about Cole Palmer, who's got a big matchup here as well. We'll touch on that as well. But Anthony Gordon was the player of the tournament, or the top scorer surely at the under-21s. So the star for England really as much as Cole Palmer, and has bizarrely kind of gone under the radar in terms of everyone talking about him. 4 goals from a 3.34 XG, 40 progressive carries, which is the most for any Newcastle player. He's so important to them. When it comes to him, do you think that he might be a player that could go and play as a centre forward for Newcastle like he has done for England?
Yeah, I think we've seen it happen before. You got to remember, this is a player that Chelsea were looking at as well in the summer. The thing was about 50 million that people were laughing out of the room at the time. And now he looks kind of worth that money for his age and his profile and the progression that he's on. He's definitely someone that can go, I guess, forward. I mean, we've seen also Isaac play on the left wing as well. He can do that too. Maybe they have a change of formation to change from their kind of 3 up top to maybe a 2 up top featuring Isaac and Gordon. That would be quite interesting. Definitely a lot of pace to get in behind. And if it's one thing as well that you look at Chelsea's back line, it's making sure that Reece James is fit, that helps a lot for sure. But then you do have maybe a Disasi and a Thiago Silva back line as the 2 centre backs, not necessarily the quickest of guys. So there is room to get in behind. And obviously Bruno looks like he's back from his 1 match suspension. His passing ability is outrageous and can find those balls if needed. So there is a lot of kind of ways for them to play. But yeah, for Gordon, I think he'll be, even if he's on that right wing up against Cucurella, I think Gordon would be happy looking at that matchup and taking that on. Or if he's up through the middle, I think either or, he'd be over the moon. In
terms of Chelsea players here, we touched on Cole Palmer there. Bit of a battle with him, a player that you probably wouldn't think of. Someone like Joe Linton, they're probably going to be right next to each other throughout the game. And Joe Linton's become this new, not new, it's been a while now, hasn't it? Like this destroyer. Would you expect him to be able to stop Cole Palmer, or is Cole Palmer as good as everyone's hyping him up to be right now?
I feel like
He's playing brilliantly.
Eddie Howe's and Herrera is Joe Linton. So he's like, I need you to man mark someone wherever they go on the pitch. And he does it down to a T. He did it against Arsenal. He did it against Liverpool earlier in the season. He was unlucky, actually, because he followed Salah around and then Trent. So this is probably the game where Eddie Howe says to him, just follow Cole Palmer. The one thing about Cole Palmer is, and I personally, every time I've watched him so far, my jaw's been on the floor. Against City, when City score for 4-3, he goes and gets the ball in midfield and he's dropping in that centre mid going, just give me the ball, I'll run the game. And we've all played with players like that. When they do that, you go, they're really hard to stop because they're almost like, at times, he's not at right wing. So Joelinton, you're going to follow him at right wing, at left back, he's going to go everywhere. So he's overall a very impressive player. I didn't actually know this stat, I've just seen it here. 4.24 progressive carries per 90, putting him in the upper tier of ball carriers in the Premier League, which is incredibly impressive, because when I first saw him play, I remember City fans saying he's the next David Silva, and so I'm going, oh, you've got bits of that, but then you've got Phil Foden in you as well. He's a very scary player, and it'll be interesting to see how Newcastle.
And I think the reason for that stat is the fact that he's one of the few players for Chelsea who's able to get it in those half spaces and then go and drive. The other being Raheem Sterling, who's been superb. 3 point.
Your guy, you love him.
My guy. Shame he's playing for Chelsea, I'm afraid. He's a QPR man deep down. 3.73 carries into the penalty area. He's been in the mood, not in a mood, in the mood, which is very, very different. And he's outscoring his XG, which is something we don't really normally see from Raheem Sterling. Last time he did it was 2021. Conversion rate of 17% as well. Those two have been absolutely crucial when it comes to the resurgence of Chelsea. Yeah. And I think those two sort of working, not in tandem, but you can see the kind of understanding of their movements.
Well, I think sometimes you actually have to add a third person to that as well. I think Conor Gallagher allows them to do that, because he just does all of the dirty
Jordan Henderson.
But all of the with Nkunku coming back, is there room for all of them? He could be back for this game, which could be a game changer.
Yeah, well. I don't think Nkunku will start after such a long time. I think it will definitely be a bench move for him. And then I think with the idea of bringing him on, and I think that would be, the for the future is him playing striker. We saw it happen in pre-season a little bit. I think ideally you don't want him playing striker. You want him to be behind, maybe in the 10, off that left wing. But you can't sacrifice Gallagher right now. You can't sacrifice Palmer, and you can't sacrifice Sterling. And so you're going to have to put him up front. And I think he may not have the legs that Jackson does of the pressing ability, but I mean, you never know. Maybe he'll be
far more
changed under
deadly, isn't he?
Pochettino. He is far more deadly, and I think that's something to be excited about. But yeah, I think you have to figure a way to have all of them on that pitch at the same time, especially at the moment with them in the form that they are. And like Gallagher is crucial to those other two because he just allows them to be free. He allows Cole Palmer to drop in. He'll go take up the space. He becomes a striker. He becomes a centre mid. He's got an absolute engine on him and does such a fantastic job of that. But yeah, I think it'll be interesting once Nkunku is back fit and firing as well.
Predictions for the game, Nubaid, and who finishes higher at the end of the season at least? Chuck that little hand grenade in.
I think Newcastle win this. It's at home. They'll be on it. They're always on it at home. I reckon 2-1. I do think Chelsea have found their mojo a little bit though. I think Conor Gallagher scores, by the way. I love this guy. He is the new Jordan Henderson.
Just needs to add that. He needs to take his Palace first half of the season ability and bring it to him now.
Totally.
I will go with a 1-1 draw. Mainly because I think, Newcastle will be thinking about that Champions League game.
Yeah, I think Eddie Howe will have a plan in place. I still haven't seen Chelsea completely break down an opposition. Man City came in and played against them, which helps them, I think. So I think it'll be 1-1 as well. And I think Newcastle will finish above them at the end of the season. But what do you guys think? Let us know in the comments below.